Zenny 62 on Friday, and as promised, we have Greg McConnell, the president, CEO of Oakland Jobs and Housing Coalition, and friend, and spokesperson for Insight Terminal Solutions. Greg, how you doing today?
I'm doing good, man. How about you?
I am outstanding, all things considered. Hey, we are talking about the victory on the part of Oakland Boken Oversized Terminal over the city of Oakland in the Ninth Circuit Court regarding the coal ban. And now the court has agreed that the lower court had correctly said essentially that the city of Oakland overstepped its bounds in even trying to establish a coal ban when it signed a hard ironclad development agreement to approve a facility that it itself knew was going to handle coal because it found coal and also had a deep hand in developing, in particular, the environmental controls for. So, where do we go from here? Greg, tell us what you think about this and development.
Well, I'll tell you what I think. I think that the citizens of Oakland ought to be really disgusted that their city attorney and outside counsel and city council and mayor have devoted in 1 year, I think it was over $10 million in legal fees.
Whew,
yes, I'll send you a copy of the city attorney's annual report that shows $10 million devoted to this thing. I'll verify that if I'm mistaken. I'm pretty sure I read it right because it was a chart and went zoom.
Yeah,
but
I'm sure you did. It probably just kind of shocked you. It was like, my God,
Well, it did. But let me take you all the way back. I remember when they first had this so-called hearing on the question of whether coal posed a substantial health risk to residents. So let's go back in time. First, the city of Oakland approved an agreement with CCIG OBOT, Phil Tagami's firm, for use of the land at the former Army base. And in that agreement, there was various reports submitted to the city, one from an outside counsel who now happens to be the deputy city administrator in Oakland, which clearly said that this terminal would be a bulk terminal and that bulk terminals ship a variety of products, and they listed them, and coal was amongst them. After they entered into the development agreement, which is a binding legal document, then apparently they got some flack from the Sierra Club and some other people who had concerns about global warming, et cetera. And they tried to say that they never agreed to that. And in fact, they tried to say that Phil Tagami, promised them that he would not ship coal. The problem was that in their staff reports, they acknowledged that coal was an item that could be shipped. And if they wanted to preclude it, they should have precluded it. Otherwise, they're bound by the four corners of the contract. There's a thing called the parole evidence rule that says that conversations that may or may not happen that allegedly are supposed to affect the legal document cannot be introduced in a court of law anywhere else because the document itself speaks for itself. So aside from the fact that they knew coal was there, they would have a technical problem with it anyway. So they came up with this construction that if they could prove that coal was a substantial health risk, a substantial hazard, even though they had agreed to it, they could then ban it from the products that could be shipped through the terminal. But to do that, they had to have a hearing, and they had to have experts, and they had to come in and prove that coal shipment creates dust and health hazards to people. And they'd have to prove that the way that ITS, the terminal operator, is going to do it, would ship it in a way that's dangerous. Well, first of all, coal has been shipped through Oakland for years in open rail cars. They tried to deny that that was happening. We showed pictures of coal cars rumbling down through Jack London Square and over on the Army base and what have you, saying, here's a coal right here. If it's so dangerous, why didn't you ban it a long time ago? But more importantly, the ITS protocol was that they were going to ship coal in covered cars that are hermetically sealed into a whole system of air control systems that prevent any dust, be it from coal or be it from corn or be it from whatever they may be shipping. So they had a dual problem. First, they had to prove that coal, even if shipped in open containers, is dangerous. And then they would have to prove that coal as shipped by ITS would, and they'd have to prove that those mitigations weren't sufficient. But they didn't even talk about that. So they conducted this hearing. And my role in the hearing was to, since I am an attorney in Washington, D.C., I didn't practice on this case, but I know process. So they hired me as a consultant to review the administrative hearing that the city council was going to have on this. And man, what a shame. We call it a kangaroo court, but I don't want to disparage kangaroos. I mean, it's just, it was horrible. They had this group, ESA, Environmental Services Associates, I think that's what it is, conduct a 160-page technical report on why coal was dangerous. The courts, when they reviewed that and other evidence, said that this report that formed the basis of a decision by the City of Oakland City Council was riddled with inaccuracies, flawed assumptions, faulty assumptions. I mean, you just couldn't put any reliance on this evidence because it was just so poorly done. And in fact, it was also political. It was not a fair hearing. They have a 160-page technical report that they introduced to the parties the night before the hearing. You don't do that. You got to give the other side opportunity to read it, rebut it, etc. The other thing is that when the city council is sitting in this capacity, they're sitting as judges. They're not sitting as politicians and elected council people. They're sitting as judges. It's an administrative hearing. They've got to conduct themselves with fairness according to principles of administrative hearings. There were expert witnesses that city council members paid for themselves to come and talk against coal. Dan Cobb used City of Oakland money in his office holders account to hire people to come and testify against coal as experts. Now, everybody knows that a judge can't create the witness and then have an objective and fair evaluation of the witness. But those are the kinds of things that happen. So obviously the city council, the experts told the city council that, I'm going to turn this off, I'm sorry.
Okay, sure.
I'm going to try to turn it off. It's got a mind of its own. Anyway, the experts told the city council this stuff, these so-called experts, and the city council ruled that coal is dangerous. They denied that coal was already being shipped through Oakland, even though we showed pictures of people taking pictures from the walkover at Jack London Square. For those who don't know that, that's a downtown area near the Oakland port, and other locations. And we also showed that there's a whole system of environmental tests in the Army base and all over that part of town that detects air pollutants. And it was impaneled not for this, but for other purposes, but it could detect whether or not there was any leakage, any exposure from dust, et cetera. And there was none. And again, these are open coal cars rumbling down the street. not the covered, hermetically sealed cars that ITS is going to use. So they concluded, in a foregone conclusion, that indeed there was a substantial risk of danger to the community. Well, CCIG, God bless them. I mean, they had the fortitude, they had the resources, and they had the will to say, no, we're not going to allow this to happen. We're going to, and so they filed a suit in federal court. And Judge Vince Chabre, I hope I'm pronouncing it right.
Chabra.
Okay. He heard the case. He reviewed the evidence. He looked at all of this documentation alleged that the city put forward. And he said, no one could conclude, based upon this so-called evidence, that there is a hazard. Again, riddled with inconsistencies, faulty analysis, and used some other disparaging words as well. He said that you couldn't rely upon the ESA reports for a variety of reasons, and he threw it out. It's important to note that Judge Chabre was appointed by President Obama. It's important also to note that Judge Chabre was an attorney with the San Francisco City Attorney's Office. This is hardly a guy that you would describe as some kind of right-wing ideologue. This is a Bay Area. This is a Bay Area moderate to liberal judge appointed by the first Black president we ever had. This ain't Donald Trump's appointee. So he ruled with a bench trial. He didn't even have a jury trial. He just said, no, this is nonsense, and threw it out. Said that does not form the basis of a substantial case of injury, likelihood of substantial injury to people based on call. So that threw out their whole basis for trying to undermine the development agreement contract that they had developed. They appealed that to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals looked at it and says, we completely agree with Judge Chabre. You can't rely upon this evidence because it's riddled with inaccuracies. And then they also talked about the process, and they also talked about other elements, and they said no. So now all of a sudden people come out and say, well, see, two of those judges were appointed by Trump. One of them who dissented was not. And so they try to make the case that this is a political decision, but they can't get over the fact that all they were doing was affirming the decision of Judge Chabre, who again was a San Francisco city attorney in a former life, and who was an appointee of President Obama.
And can I add something real quick? And that really underscores the need for the reason why ITS hired Zenny 62 Media, and I sought them as a client, because the standard media, in this case Courthouse, did not point out. They simply reported that, those folks say that it's the Republican judges. But Courthouse could have said, oh, by the way, as you said, Chabre was appointed by President Obama. But now you're getting the straight scoop. I just want to make that point.
Yeah, no, and I even saw a report the other day that said we were not surprised that the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals ruled as they did because these were Donald Trump appointees. That doesn't make sense, because what they were doing was reviewing the decision of the lower court judge who found, beyond adventure, that this thing was not true, that the allegations made were not supportable as a matter of fact, and clearly could not form the basis of a legal decision to undo a binding contract that they knew about before they signed the contract. And that's important, because Judge Chabre said that there was indication and evidence prior to the city council authorizing the agreement, and the city of Oakland signing the agreement, that coal was one of was one of the products that could be shipped.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the damnedest thing. It's like they're just making it up out of, and now, there's discussion about are they going to request an in-bank hearing, which means that they ask all of the judges. This is a panel of 3. There's 9, I think, members of the full district Court of Appeals. They can ask for an in-bank hearing, and all of those judges can say yes, they'll have an in-bank hearing, or no. And if they have it, then they review the same evidence that Chabray ruled on and that the panel ruled on, and the result is not going to be different. Meanwhile, you have a city, and this is
It'll cost more money, right?
Well, this is what's ironic and very important.
Oh, and by the way, did that actually come from the city attorney? Or did that come from a media speculation? Because I thought it was a media speculation myself.
Which? About the in-bank hearing?
Yeah.
No, it did not come from the city attorney. The city has not said anything yet. This is the Sierra Club and others trying to push the city to do that.
From No Coal in Oakland, they're just speculating, and that's why I say it, because a number of things that they say to the press are just completely blank blood bank wrong, and the press eats it up and doesn't question it because the press doesn't like the outcome.
Well,
let me just put it.
If the business community told the falsehoods, outright lies that the activists tell, they would run the business community out of town on the rail. They are free to say whatever they want to say, and when it comes up that it's not true, oh, my bad. Boy, but you let anybody from ITS or OBOT or any of them get caught telling something that just is not true, man, they'd want to hang them. It's just crazy. But this is what you got to think about also, is that these people, here's an example. The city of Richmond recently just summarily said no more coal in Richmond. And companies had contracts where they were shipping stuff and that Richmond had allowed. And when Richmond summarily ruled in a city council meeting without any hearings, without anything, that you can't do that anymore, these companies sued.
Yep.
And when they sued, they brought big legal bucks, big legal titans to court with them. So Mayor Tom Butt, who's the mayor of Richmond, says to the Sierra Club and these other no coal people, says, okay, now how much money are you going to contribute to defend Richmond against this lawsuit? And they said, oh, wait a minute, Shorty. we didn't say we were going to spend any money. We said we'll just support you argument and in principle, but we don't have any money. So Tom Butt says, well, we're a small cash-strapped city. We can't afford to fight the kind of battle that you guys are trying to push us into fighting, and you're not going to help pay for it. So fast forward back to Oakland. Now, these same kinds of people are saying, city attorney, city council, mayor, fight them, fight them, fight them. We got your back. Well, they didn't have Richmond's back. Meanwhile, Oakland, right now, city council is considering a budget revise. They have concluded that they're going to have a $120 million deficit over the next 2 years.
Wow.
Oakland's budget is so bad that an organization, have your readers look it up. It's called Truth in Accounting. It's a nonprofit that reviews city activities all over the nation. They said we'd have to give the city of Oakland an F for fiscal mismanagement, that their financial problems are so robust that in order for them to be in the black, they'd have to charge $21,000 to every taxpayer in the city of Oakland. So there's a double whammy here, that the court, the initial court and the Court of Appeals has found that there was no merit to the city of Oakland's claims that coal was dangerous and a health hazard. And now people are trying to push them to continue to pursue that when they have no money.
Oh, and worse, in the middle of a pandemic when people need jobs.
I'm sorry, repeat that. Siri was talking to me in my ear.
And worse, in the middle of a pandemic when people need jobs.
Yes.
Including the city, which, as you pointed out, the $122 million deficit, a good portion of that was caused by the pandemic. Yeah.
Well, no.
Oh, it wasn't.
This $120 million deficit is pre-pandemic.
Oh, well, hey, sorry, I was trying to
So
throw
now it's a hell of a lot more than 120 million.
Oops.
The truth in accounting, accounting was for a time frame before the pandemic. The city auditor of Oakland said that we have an absolute financial crisis, and my assessment is based upon pre-pandemic operations. So we don't know how bad it's going to be now that all the restaurants are closed and they're not paying taxes, the barbershops are closed, the major businesses are shut down. I mean, my office is in the Rotunda. You know how many major businesses in there? Man, you go in there, you think you're in the Grand Canyon. You say hello, hello. There's nobody in the building.
Wow.
So I guess the long and short of it is that I understand that there are people who are hell-bent on no coal based upon what they perceive to be the threat to global warming, which hasn't been proved, but also based upon, this coal is not going to be burned in Oakland. It's not going to be burned in the United States. This is high quality, high burn rate, low emission coal from Utah. It's going to be burned in Japan and India and places around the world. And Japan, by the way, is a signatory to the Paris Climate Control. They got rid of their nuclear facilities because of what happened with Fukushima, wherever it was. And they're building coal burning facilities now, and they will still be compliant with the Paris Climate Control because this coal burns cleanly.
Hey, now the cleanest energy plant in the world is actually in China, and it's coal burning. And something else too, what bothers me about this whole thing is the activists that yell and scream about this never have a plan of their own. They want the city of Oakland, and then of course San Francisco, in another case, to fight battles, or in this case with the city to engage in a legal battle against OBOT that the city can't win and knows itself it can't win because, among other things, Pat Cashman, a man who hired me for the Oakland Redevelopment Agency in 1987, was the person that hired the Tioga Group to write the Tioga study that found coal for Oakland in 2009.
And there's a lot, and I'm thank you for bringing that up because there's a lot of history I wouldn't want to get into because we could be talking for the next 5 weeks. But it's true. There's all kinds of documentation, and there are all kinds of staff reports. And there's been this, Pat Cashman was involved, and he's gone. Claudia Capio was a lead investigator. She's gone. Deanna Santana was the city administrator. Fred Blackwell was the deputy city. All of them are gone. And now they just make this out of whole cloth. And even now, the more recent city administrators, Sabrina Landreth, I mean, it's just a complete, absolute turnover.
Yeah, and our institutional memory is shot,
Right. And this is not an argument about a parking ticket. This is a major, major, major activity that affects jobs, it affects tax revenues. And then you have ITS, they're coming in and they're saying, look, we want to be a good corporate citizen. We are pledging $6 million per year for the next 66 years to a citizens commission to develop community benefit programs for like job training or healthcare in the districts around the airspace, mobile health facilities, et cetera. We're talking about substantial community benefits. We're talking about jobs, and we're talking about revenues to a city that has a $120 million deficit, and for political reasons, not based on science, because the judge threw that out, not based on health, because the judge threw that out. They are going to avoid all of this. And by the way, Zenny, coal is going through the city of Oakland as we tape this interview. There are coal trains running open, coal trains running through Oakland, through Jack London Square, through the Army base, on their way to Richmond, Stockton, and other places. And in all of the years, they never once found anybody that was glowing because of coal. They never once have had cases of health hazards identified by the transport of coal the way that it is being transported now. And the way it's going to be transported, and I think you're going to have other people that are going to talk about that, so I won't get into great detail, other than to say that the way it's going to be transported, you won't see it, you won't smell it, you won't inhale it, you won't even know it's in town. They are going to use systems that are used for transporting radioactive materials in other places, not here. It has that level of safeguard and safety.
And I'm going to let that be the last word because we have Mr. Tagami, Phil Tagami of California Capital Investment Group, California Commercial Investment Group, right behind you.
He'll do a much better job than me.
No, I thought you did an outstanding job. You're like the dynamic duo. Actually, I'm trying to get John Siegel on. He's this ITS CEO, so that's the dynamic trio. But if I can get David Smith, that'll be the dynamic. That'll be a fantastic.
Quattro. Yeah, you got what was it? Dynamic Quattro.
Fantastic.
And pretty soon you have to do Cinco because we miss Cinco de Mayo.
We'll see. My Spanish is for naught, so French is better. But that's why I decided to go with one of my favorite Marvel Comics character groups, the Fantastic Four. So how about the Fantastic Four?
Well, thank you for having me, and I hope I did.
You did a fantastic job. We'll be back. We'll be back for more because we have to talk about Oakland separate from this. There's a lot to talk about there too.
Oh, that is very, very important. There's real problems, real deep problems that people they're trying to put band-aids on. It's incredible.
Yeah.
All right, man.
Don't go anywhere. But folks, we'll be back in a few minutes. And also don't forget at 3:00 Eastern, Tanis Parental, who was on Billions and who was on the House of Cards before that, and who was most recently on FBI Most Wanted, is my guest. Subscribe to Zenny62. You won't be sorry. Stick around, Greg.
All right.
All right.